Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast. We're so excited you're here. Thank you so much for joining us and listening in. Today, we're very excited to be interviewing our very own Nina Ding, the social media manager for Transfer Nation. And if you haven't listened to any of our episodes yet, my name is Chrissy. I'm also a social media manager for Transfer Nation. And of course, also joining us is our lovely hostess, Dr. Heather Adams, the founder of Transformation. And we are just so thrilled and excited to hear about Nina's story and really hear about why she's passionate about transfer and why she, not only is serving as a social media manager with Transfer Nation, but why she chose transfer and why she thinks other students should do the same and how we can empower educators in that same journey. So Nina, we're so excited to be interviewing you today. And Heather, you want to start us off with our introduction question for Nina?
Absolutely. I cannot wait. Nina, I've known you for a little while now, and I realize I absolutely don't know that much about your transfer story, which is so wild because we talk about transfer all the time and we highlight other folks' transfer story. So I just really want to hear a little bit from you today about your transfer journey, how it started, and where it's led you.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Chrissy. And for listeners, we actually interviewed Chrissy last time, so be sure to check that episode out if you haven't. Her story is super empowering and inspirational. And again, thank you for that question. Yeah, it's surprising that I haven't told my story to you yet, I think. I started off in, I think, what people call in the transfer community a very traditional route, meaning that I went straight to community college right after high school, took 2 years at community college, and then spent 2 years at a four-year institution, and that happens to be UCLA. But to backtrack a little bit, yes, straight out of high school, I went to a very competitive high school in Huntington Beach, Marina High School. Shout out to the Vikings. And all of my friend groups, everyone I knew was very, very competitive. Like they took a ton of AP or advanced placement classes. And I didn't thrive academically. Like I didn't really like studying. I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to just like hang out with my friends, like make art, take naps. Like, I was a high school student, like that did not want to study, but I try to stay competitive. So I took a lot of AP classes and unfortunately I didn't thrive. Like I got like all C's. I took the SAT 3 times, but I didn't score that well with them. And constantly I was really insecure. And when it came time to choose a college my senior year, I applied to a lot of the UCs, the University of California's, a lot of the Cal States, a lot of those two mostly. And I unfortunately didn't hear back with a lot of them. And it was very heartbreaking. And I felt like maybe school just wasn't for me. I didn't have a lot of the choices. And I went to a college counselor at the high school. They were like kind of representing at my high school there. And they told me, like, community college is like nothing to be ashamed of. It's a really good option. And she asked me, like, what do you want to do as a career? And I was like, I didn't even think about that. I was like, I don't know, like a teacher. Like I just named all the really typical like roles you hear, like if you ask like a first grader what they want to do, like an astronaut. Like it was so like I really was like, wow, here I was like 17 going on 18, like no idea what I wanted to do, no idea what I was passionate about. And it was really helpful because I talking to that counselor, because I realized, okay, I have another option. And but secretly I was really ashamed of it, unfortunately. Like I had no pride. And when it came down to what's it called, the college signing day that is really celebrated, I didn't even have the gut to sign my name or post about where I was going. And even though I had a ton of friends, like I didn't really tell anyone until like summer, when it was like very evident that I was going to community college. But all that shame went away so quickly because the fall I started at community college, it was the best thing ever. My first class was with an amazing professor, an English professor actually. And the class was only like 20 other students, and it was the most interactive experience I've ever had. I remember getting my first essay back and it was like a B minus, but the professor was like, "Can I talk to you after school or after class?" Sorry. And he was like, "You like I know you. Like you like answer your questions. You like know this book really well. Like I want you to like practice with me like on your writing." And like he would send me these passages of like poems and stuff through email, and had me like just talk about it and kind of just like analyze it like kind of from my mind at the moment. And he was like, "See, like you like have the ability to analyze like a lot more than you know." And like the next essay it was like 100%. And then I just like grew so much confidence from there. And it was just such a cool experience. And it reminded me that I always was in love with like films. I was in this big film club in high school where I like did all the physical filming and stuff. And I started kind of applying that like love for film and sharing stories into all the classes I took, and realizing like everything has a story, like even like calculus has a story, like you're trying to get to point one to point B basically. And it drove me through, and I started doing an honor society where they volunteer for the community at my community college. And then it brought me to applying to UCLA, and then I graduated in March.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That, do you remember the name of that professor? It sounds like he really had a profound impact on your journey.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because he did pass away from a heart attack. Yeah,
Oh
but
no.
so to honor him a little bit, his name is Professor Dan Corfield. Yeah, and he meant a lot to me, and it was actually quite heartbreaking when I found out he had passed away, because it was right in the time when I was applying for the colleges. And he had told me about all the poets that were in San Francisco. And so I was actually really inspired to go to Berkeley at the time, because I really wanted to like honor him in that. And the summer before I went to UCLA, I did take a trip to San Francisco and like went to the library that he told me about and such. So yeah, that honors him a lot. But yeah, he did really make a profound impact on me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really important to let those folks know when they have that kind of an influence and impact on you. So um, uh, mentors and advisors are so important. They come up again and again when we talk about the transfer journey, in terms of guiding and inspiring and encouraging and empowering us to choose our own educational journey, whatever that is going to look like for us. So it sounds like you had a really great one in that professor. Had college been part of the conversation for you growing up? Was that something that your parents had an expectation for? Had they gone to college, and was that something that was part of your upbringing, or was that something you were really mining and crafting on your own with the help of these mentors?
That's a great question. So my parents are Vietnamese immigrants, and I'm the first American-born child of theirs. My brother is 12 years older than me, and he did go straight into the four-year path right out of high school. And my parents, they thought that's the only route. Like your brother succeeded, he became an engineer, and they were telling me like, that's like the only route you need to go to, like straight out of high school, go to the four-year, graduate, you'll get a job and start a family, yada yada. So even though I had kind of the footprints of my brother, I really did molded my own transfer route. Like when I told them about going to community college, it was unfortunate that they were very discouraged about the idea, because in their mind they thought, oh, for like community college is just for people who are older and like need to learn like a few technical skills, or like they thought it was only for people who want to go to beauty school. And they thought immediately like, oh, she's just going to drop out and like not do much in her life. So there was that pressure on me, because I was like, I need to prove them wrong. And so I took like all the classes that I needed, and I never took a break. I like took all the summer classes, I took the winter intercessions, and it's actually why I graduated a little bit early, because I had like way too many credits at community college. But anyways, it was a very unfortunate pressure because I had to really prove that I wasn't going to drop out, which is a very terrible stereotype on community colleges. So yeah.
Yeah, and Nina, I feel like you were shattering that stereotype of about community college, especially because you were so involved. You said you got to graduate early because you took so many classes and you got it done right away. And even though you were doing so many classes and got to graduate and transfer early, you still were getting involved with things like the Transfer Society. So I'm kind of wondering, what did getting involved at the community college level, how did that affect you and your transfer journey? What kind of impact did that leave? Because I think there's also a misconception that students don't need to get involved while they're at community college, kind of like, oh, just get in there, get it done, and then transfer. And then you'll go and get involved and live the, the 4-year university life, when really that's a huge misconception. There's so many amazing opportunities at the community college level. So if you could just share a little bit about what being involved in that honor society was like, and what that really did for you, and maybe even how it affected, that transferring and later experiences for you.
Oh my God, I love that question so much because yes, it's super true. I also had that mindset like, oh, I should just like quickly go through community college. Like it's okay, I'll have a life when I get to whatever school I get to. And yeah, that stereotype is awful because community college is dope, y'all. Or I don't want to say that. Community college is really awesome. All right, Abraham, scratch that. Community college is really
No, that's the title of this episode. Community college is dope.
Wait. I'm so sorry. I'm like oh my gosh. Community college is amazing, and there are people from all walks of life at community college. I went to UCLA. Honestly, I met more diverse people at my community college, at least in my experience. I know that's not for everyone, but I met parents. I met first generation. I met people who were learning English as a first language. I met so many different people. I met like a 15-year-old taking classes while they were in high school. And I met like people who were bringing in their children while taking classes. I met people who were in their 80s just taking English classes for fun and psychology classes for fun, you know? I met like PhD students who were just like trying to review their studies again. And it's why wouldn't you want to bond with so many people is my personal thought. And so joining the Alpha Gamma Sigma Honor Society, which is a academic honor society specifically for community college, I think California community colleges specifically, and they offer scholarships for students as well. And this changed me because I got to bond with a lot of people from my community colleges within all these walks of life that I mentioned, and work with them and building my community at the school and also in the city and doing volunteerism. We do super cool stuff, like we did menstruation pad drives where we just collected a lot of pads and delivered them to women. We did a homeless shelter drive. We did one where we walked greyhounds. Fun fact, greyhounds very oftentimes get neglected after they are no longer used for racing. And so there was this big, nearby my city, this big rescue, and they take up a lot of energy because they're like racing dogs. And so we came there to volunteer ourselves with just walking them, and we would just talk and walk all over the park. And it was just amazing. And there'd be socials where we went bowling, and sometimes we would just go and grab ice cream or play frisbee golf. And it just made me realize like I love community college because I have never felt more connected to the city I was raised in. And I think that was how it changed me. And I really hope that people continue to really get involved while they're at community college because it's so much fun and it's so cool. And I just love seeing so many diverse people from all backgrounds.
That is so true. And we're snapping over here if you're not seeing us and you're just listening to this on the podcast and not on the video cast. But both Chrissy and I think wholeheartedly concur. with that. And so thank you for sharing that, Nina. It sounds like you gained so much from community college, and I'm curious, in your transition to your four-year university to UCLA, what did you gain? What did you learn from community college that you were able to transferable skills, are something I talk about a lot, to your four-year experience that really helped kind of ricochet you into success and thriving at UCLA?
The easier question to answer would be like, what didn't I learn? Honestly, I learned so much. On all my resumes and every time I talk about jobs, I always mention that I was a transfer student because just that transition, it's in our name, like transfer, like transition, or yeah, kind of. But I think the biggest thing though, if I had to pinpoint one big thing, would be just endurance and being compassionate. I guess that's two things. I'm so sorry. But the two things would be endurance and being compassionate. Those two really helped me thrive and go into UCLA with a full heart and an open mind into doing all my studies and meeting new people. Like the biggest shock to me at UCLA was just the large capacity of the whole school. Like you're going from like a nice like 15 to 30 people classes in each class at community college. In UCLA, it's like, oh, here's your intro to psych class. It's like 100 people or 200. Oh, sometimes 300. So and that was the biggest shocker, but I was able to take the power of compassion and just talk to people, just like a few of those around me, get like some phone numbers and get like some email contacts and make like a really close connection to like at least a few people of the 100. And that was really the thing that made me thrive, because I was able to talk to people, or I would meet people in my dorms and find out, oh, they're in that class too. Oh my gosh. And then like, talk about the classes. And I also was fortunate enough to live in the transfer dorms at UCLA and have that experience of being around other transfer students, which I think is so important, because having that shared experience of knowing that someone living next to you also went to a different school like just a few months before you, it makes the compassion like so much easier, I think, and accessible.
So true. Transfer community all the way. Um, so speaking of community and of other students, one of the things that we love to do in this podcast when we're talking about the student journey and the transfer student narrative is really hear from each student, each transfer, um, three questions, the answer to three questions. And the first one is, what is one tip or insight for students interested in transfer that you would give? And you've given a lot of great suggestions, but if you had to think of one tip or insight, what would it be?
My one tip, it's going with an open heart, I think. And yeah, I would just say go in with an open heart and meet the people around you, because you'll learn a lot of the people. I haven't forgotten any of the people I took with my anatomy classes, all the nurses to be that I got to learn from that were in my psychobiology class. I haven't forgotten any of the people I did all my labs with and where I dissected animals with and counted all the skulls. Like it makes a big difference. I didn't have that in high school, and I had friends, like I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have the people I could go to talk about, my academic struggles. I kept that all in, and I didn't have people to go to ask about reviewing what I was learning. And I would just say, like, just have an open heart. And I was fortunate to have such an amazing professor go to me and talk to me about my ability that I didn't even see at the time. But I just hope people see that in themselves too and open up and ask for the help they need. And so, yeah, just have an open heart, and people are kind. So just remember that as well.
And when you're talking about kindness, I also think back to your amazing professor who, with his own kindness, reached out to you and basically told you that he saw your potential and then he helped you put it to practice. And It's just so incredible. And so that has to do with our second question, which is what's one thing that you wish educators, so that can include professional faculty or administration, whether it could be a professor, just anyone working in the, the faculty who's actually interacting with the transfer students, or at, a decision-making level as well. What's one thing you wish they knew about the transfer experience specifically?
I would say, sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart. Hang on. I would say I think transfer students come from, I mentioned this before too, come from such a diverse background and all walks of life. And I just hope all educators have that awareness. I've been very fortunate as a traditional transfer student, like I mentioned, to have experienced like no sort of like neglect in like my access of education. I've never felt really left out. I've been around the same age as my general group of students. But I have spoken to students who are a bit older, who maybe feel like they haven't been made aware of, or like been accidentally called like the wrong title, like, oh, they think it's like the professor. And I just hope all educators are aware like that transfers come from all walks of life, all have different situations. These could be parents that you're talking to, these could be caregivers, they could be learning English for the first time. So I just hope there's that compassion with all educators. And I wish they knew that about transfers.
That is so beautiful. And it actually makes me think of a question that's semi-related to our last question to wrap us up. But I'm curious, Nina, in the diversity of our community, what do you think it is about transfer that unites us, that pulls us all together? What is it about this miraculous thing, that this transfer identity, that allows the veteran, the mother, the traditionally, younger student, the older student, the career person? What allows us all to connect on such a deep level, do you think?
Wow, I think it's just the passion to learn. I think it takes away age, it takes away, economic class, and it just realizes like, wow, everyone wants to learn that what is in this journey. Doesn't matter like what background you came from, what you've been through. As long as you have the drive to learn, drive to inspire others, drive to even like help others, like that's I think that's what unites everyone so well. And it's really cool because I am a psychology major, as you both know, and maybe some of the folks listening might already know. But I don't have the traditional route of a psychology student, as I think people would think. Like, I'm not going into research specifically. I'm not trying to be a therapist, as like some people might assume, or a counselor. I'm actually trying to go into the creative field. But the transfer community is super open about that, because they're like, yeah, the transfer experience is like limitless. You can do anything. Like, you can go from being a nurse to being like a surgeon if you wanted to. Like, it doesn't, like, it's just limitless. And as long as you have the drive to learn, like, you can do anything. And I love that.
I so agree. So this is related, and this might be your answer. You might have just given the answer to this question, but what is the one thing that you want society, family who maybe don't understand the transfer experience, to understand about the transfer experience?
That it's all limitless. Yes, you're very right to kind of just answer. It really is just so limitless. I'm even considering going back to community college now to get an associate's in design, because why not? Like, my bachelor's isn't serving me the way I might want to, and I might just want to take classes for fun and just go back. I just, yeah, the transfer experience is, and community college and anything like that. And it doesn't even have to be community college. I know that was what I've been saying and what y'all have heard a lot of. But if you're from an institution that you don't like, I hope you have the courage to maybe transfer into another one. and really give yourself the learning experience that you deserve and that you want, because that's also a transfer experience. But it's all limitless. It's your education. And I don't want people to be ever bounded by money, by, feeling that they're stopped by any force, because they're not. And you can do it.
If we hadn't already named this podcast episode Transferring is Dope, we would have named it It's All Limitless. So, Nina, all that to say, it was amazing hearing about your story and getting to hear about your experience and what you feel like the world should know about transferring. And thank you so much, truly, for sharing that with us. We really loved hearing it. So thank you, Nina. And we hope you would listen and join us for the other episodes that have been released as well of the Transfer Nation podcast and videocast. There are so many amazing stories that have already been discussed in some of our previous episodes in addition to this one. And there's a lot of amazing things that will be coming out soon that we hope you can tune in and listen to. Another thing I want to touch on is if Nina's story really spoke to you today and you want to get connected in that type of community that she's talking about, we hope you would join our Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/groups/transfornation. There's an amazing community of educators, professionals who are working with transfer students, as well as transfer student alumni and transfer students, all in one hub of us, sharing tips, sharing resources, sharing stories like what you heard from Nina. And we would love for you to be a part of that conversation. And so if this podcast, and what you've heard today interests you, feel free to join that, and we would love for you to be there. But on that note, thank you so much for joining and listening to our podcast today. And as always, in Transfer Pride.
Oh my God, that was so good.
I almost fucked up the ending. I almost